Hi, hello, welcome to Money presentation. Today we are going to discuss about the research hypothesis. And first of all, what is hypothesis and why it is useful for research and what are the benefit for is what is the research of the hypothesis we are going to discuss about in the class. An assumption about relationship between variable. Here variable means there are two variable, that is one is independent variable and dependent variable. The relationship between the two variable, that is called the hypothesis. Hypothesis bring clarity, specificity and focus to reach a research problem but are not essential for a study. It can it will be very useful to for for further calculation and for the final result. And the hypothesis primarily arises from a set of hunches that are tested through a study. Hypotheses are the main part of our research because through the hypothesis we can get many data about that. We can give a clarity about that. Next, criteria for hypothesis constructions. And what are the construction process? First one is it is never formulated in the form of questions. It cannot be in the formulated in the form of questions because the research question is there and the research objective is the same. So final next step is going to the research hypothesis. In this hypothesis, we can give that relationship between the variables. What is a variable means? There are two variables that is called independent and dependent variable, mediating variable. There are different types of variable, but we can consider into a two variables. It should be empirically tested. Definitely, it could be empirically tested whether the data is to be good or bad. And next step is it should be specific and precise. Whatever the questions you are making for research hypothesis, it can be in a specific manner, and statement in it should not be in a contradictory. Whether you could not able to the contradictory statement you could not able to use because of based on the hypothesis objectives and based on the research question, you have to prepare for the hypothesis construction. Next step, it should be describe one issue only. Here I can describe about the one issue. What is a major research problem in that? How can you solve the problem through the research hypothesis? Next is defining hypothesis. What is the definition of hypothesis? Hypotheses are a single tentative guesses and good hunches assumed for a use in the devising theory or planning experiments intended to be given a direct experimental test when else possible, which is given by the Eric Rogers in 1966. And hypothesis is we can simply say that a hypothesis is a part of research. In that research, we can get the result through the hypothesis by using of experiments. What are the experiment we are going to use means for the using of SIM models, SIM software and IBM SPSS and smart PLS. These are the process. Next, a hypothesis is a formal statement that represents the expected relationship between an independent and dependent variable, which is given by the Creswell in 1994. So hypothesis is the main thing is to know the relationship between the two variables. Next, nature. What is the nature of hypothesis? The hypothesis is a clear statement what is intended to be investigated. It should be specified before research is conducted and openly stated in the reporting the result. This is also allows. The following is the main part of that research hypothesis. Number one is identify the research objectives, and second one is identify the key abstract concept. What is the key abstract concept involved in the research? Next step is going to tell that identify its relationship to both the problem statement and the literature review. How it can be interrelated to the problem statement and the literature review. These are the three steps we can to frame the research hypothesis. Next, a problem cannot be scientifically solved unless it is reduced to the hypothesis form. Whenever if you find a problem, it can be in a generalized manner, but it can be a scientific manner. So it can be solve a particular problem, and it is a powerful tool of advancement of knowledge consistent with existing knowledge and conductive to further inquiry. The while you are preparing any research questions and research objectives, based on that you need to prepare the research question. In that research question also, it can be very useful for the further inquiry also. So that is that way you want to prepare for the research hypothesis. And hypothesis, it can be tested, verifiable and falsifiable. Whether the data is going to verify, it can be good or bad, you can tell that, because the null hypothesis we are using, and so that's why I'm saying that hypotheses are not an moral or ethical questions, and it is neither too specific or not too general. It is a prediction of consequences. The prediction of consequences means what, what is the problem in that, and it is considered to be valuable even if proven falses. If there is a falsification of data, definitely it can be findable. So it can be very useful to the further consequences in that. And next, types of hypothesis. First one is null hypothesis. Second one is alternative hypothesis, designed by HO or HN. It means HO in the sense null hypothesis, and HN is HN, it indicates a null hypothesis. HO is a normal hypothesis, profound hypothesis. And alternative hypothesis designated by the H1 or HA. And next, the null hypothesis. We can describe in a brief manner. It represents a theory that has been put forward either because it is believed to be a true, or because it is to be used for a basis for argument, but has not been proved. The null hypothesis is very major part of this hypothesis testing, and alternative hypothesis statement of what hypothesis to be set up in the establish. Opposite of null hypothesis only reached if the HO is rejected. Here there are two hypotheses. Null hypothesis indicates the zero values, and alternative hypothesis indicates the H1 values. So we can test that H1 and H2. H1 is H2, or how it will be correlated and how it will be find out. So frequently how the result is going on. So while testing the hypothesis, it can be find out the result. Next example. What are the example we need to give for this hypothesis? First one is in a clinical trial of a new drug. The null hypothesis might be that the new drug is no better on average than the current drug. We would write to have this is the problem. How can you relate for this one? There is no differences between the true drugs on average. This is the example. Either this is the research problem. The new drug null hypothesis might that a new drug is no better average than the current drug. So they are saying that there is no any drug it indicates to the current. So there is no differences between the two drugs on average. This is the main example of H naught. The alternative hypothesis might be that the new drug has different effect on average compared to that of the current drug. How can you write that? So in this manner, we would write H1. The two drug have different effects on the average. So the new drug is better on average than the current drug. We would write that H1 is the new drug is better than a current drug on average. So these are the example to write that hypothesis testing. And the formulating hypothesis. Here the formulating hypothesis, we can write that how to develop the hypothesis through scientific manner. And here I'm going to write that problematic hypothesis, which can be very useful for your further research also. The next session we will we want to discuss about only for the formulating hypothesis in a clear-cut manner. Next, in qualitative research, how the hypotheses are very useful, and how it will be useful. Generally, hypotheses are not used, and almost no importance is given to them in qualitative research. Why? In a passing survey found that 97% of the 168 decisions surveyed were qualitative. Of these qualitative studies, 34% were studies that used hypotheses, and out of all the hypothesis driven studies, only 3 of them are tested their hypothesis. The rest of the sample dissertations merely stated hypothesis without testing them in the study. The majorly in qualitative study, they are not supposed to find out the hypothesis, because of they need to frame the conceptual paper. So in that conceptual paper, their wish, they could be write the hypothesis or not. So their wish. So researchers avoid the hypothesis in a qualitative research by arguing that qualitative research studies are not hypothesis driven. So these are the main important points in qualitative research, why we could not able to write the frame the hypothesis in qualitative research. Next, what is qualitative research? Already we are discussing in before classes, but now we want to discuss in a clear-cut manner. Qualitative research is any research that produce the outcomes that were not arrived at using the statistical procedure or other methods of quantification. If we are going to use research hypothesis, In 100% it is not possible in qualitative research, because you don't know, unless you are don't know about that future prediction. Okay, so you need to frame the only conceptual paper in hyper qualitative research. But while coming to the quantitative research, in that quantitative research everything is measurable, because we are going to use the statistical method. So it will be very useful in quantitative research. Definitely you would frame the research hypothesis. Next, this definition suggests that qualitative research can lead to outcomes or findings in the form of narratives, storylines, numbers, or quantities, and scenarios, theories, hypotheses, etc. Yes, in qualitative research, what are the things we are going to do? What are the things we need to frame that? First one is the narratives. How can we narrate that one story? How can I relate it? Because of the prediction based, you need to write the narratives. And storylines. You can write that story. Numbers of quantities and scenario, whatever the thing you need to see in the current term. So on the theories, and before there is a plenty of theories is there each in every department. So you need to frame the theories to be in a unique manner. So you need to develop this. And finally the hypothesis, they are designed to build a understanding. Why we need to build the research hypothesis, why it is very important means, you need to give a clear cut data to the audience. So I need to frame the hypothesis which can be very understandable manner. And clearly you are giving the statement to the your audience. And highly context specific. Yes, highly context specific means you need to give a contextual informations. And arguments made stating that non-applicability of hypothesis in qualitatives. Some of the arguments were made in the qualitative research. What are the arguments? You can see that one by one. The qualitative research is entirely inductive. Entirely inductive means it's a historical manner, and it can be it could not be in a measurable manner, and only aims to understand the meaning or experiences embedded in the events. So if you are seeing any events itself, if you are going to the any particular place, if you are seeing some problem, you need to frame the one article in that, so it can be publishable. So the main aim is you are going to write that experience, your manual experience, you are going to write that. You could not be measurable that, if you are facing some problem, that is part of your only, you are the only one, you are facing the problem. So next thing is findings of a qualitative research are bound to particular situation or context. Yes, and qualitative research is mostly based upon the interpretivism and constructivism. Interpretivism and constructivism, it means you are interpreting the data, you are construct the data. So qualitative research mainly based upon the interpretivism and constructivism. And next one is hypotheses are usable in qualitative research inquiries but are not provable or testable. Yes, in qualitative research it could not be in a measurable manner, it cannot testable manner. Next one is non-specificity of the problem as well as methods and procedure. We could not able to specify the what is a particular problem, what is a particular method you are going to use in research, so it could not be specified. And the degree of specificity of hypothesis is difficult to achieve. Yes, definitely. By coming to the quantitative research, you need to give each and every narration to that, each and every measurable points to the your target audience. But while coming to this, you could not able to specify that hypothesis to achieve the something. So hence, the testing of hypothesis becomes meaningless in this qualitative research. Next, can hypothesis be tested in a qualitative research? Yes, that is your wish. How hypothesis can be tested in how qualitative research, and what are the ways to tested in the qualitative research. First one is qualitative research is a very flexible type of research. It can be a flexible manner, it can be either inductive or deductive. So it can be an inductive and deductive means we are going to use some exploratory information. If the hypothesis of a research study are qualitative, the researcher may use both quantitative and qualitative data to prove. Yes, the most of the persons, the most of the scholars were using the both mixed method, then only they can prove that the result. So it can be very useful.
If you are going for the qualitative research, you cannot be prove that. While coming to the quantitative research, each and everything is to be in a provable manner, because you are going to use the statistical measures, and every possible definition of a hypothesis ends with a common understanding that a hypothesis is an unvalidated assumption. The final is unvalidated assumption is based on the this method. Next, identify. This is the main important step while you are going to the research. You need to know that, and identify, state the research problem. What is the problem of that? Formulate the critical questions to the investigate the problem. What is the critical question you are going to investigate the problem? And and the first one is the research problem you need to find out, and then you need to formulate the questions, critical questions. That is called the research question need to be framed that. And next, identify the variables to be accessed from the questions, and formulate the hypothesis based on the variable identifies. You need to find out that the hypothesis of variables. What are the variables I need to formulate? And next one is state the hypothesis. Which type of state of hypothesis I am going to use? And next, identify the data tailored to the hypothesis, and identify the data. Which type of data I'm going to use to tailor the hypothesis. Next, analyze them and collect the data tailored to the hypothesis. Final step, before step is collect the data. What are the data? It is whether it is it is qualitative data or quantitative data. And final step is to analyze the data tailored to the hypothesis. We need to analyze the data tailored hypothesis. And final step is interpret the whatever the data you need to analyze is. The final step is interpret the data, analyze the data to the whether it is accepted or rejected. Based on that hypothesis you are framing that. Next, generation of research hypothesis. Problem statement become the research hypothesis when constructor operationalized. The based on the initial ideas of often vague or general. Initial observations and a search of existing research literature. Statement of the problem, operational definition of a construct, research hypothesis. These are the generation of research hypothesis. First one is the initial ideas. Every person have to frame the initial ideas, but while it could be in a constructible manner, whatever the thing. Next one is the initial observation. What are the observation you have been made? So you need to focus on the third step, search of existing research literature review. So is the existing literature what that have been framed, how it can be, I want to formulate that, how it can be changed to the recent scenario. Next one is statement of the problem. Statement of the problem, it indicates what is the main problem you are going to the facing in that your research. So you need to specify that. Operational definitions, operational definitions of construct, and it indicates that what is the construct I need to frame that. The research hypothesis, the research hypothesis, how it can be very deductive manner or predictable manner. Next, testing and challenging. This is the major step which is the degree of challenge to hypothesis will depend on the type of problem and its importance. It can range from it seeking a good enough solution to the such more rigorous challenge. Yeah, while you are framing any hypothesis, definitely it will be an understandable manner, and it can be solve the problem of your research, and whether it could be a good idea for your future research. It could not be in a duplicate. It could not able to be a duplicate manner. So whatever the problem it has been, so you need to reduce that. If you are facing some problem, so definitely it could be do not copy from the other ideas. So if your ideas means, you need to develop some more things, some more variables to instruct that, and it can be in a measurable manner. Next, the term challenging may be included. What are the challenging you have been facing? That is the first one is verification. Next one is justification. Next one is a refutability. And third one is fourth one is validity and rectifications and repeatability and falsification. Falsification means you need to write the duplicate data. Do the same thing, you need to be copy that. The repeatability, already if you are using some variables, some sentences in your research, the same thing you have been done in that same, so it could be in a repeatable manner, don't to be repeatable. And a rectification, the rectification means you need to rectify the errors. What is the errors it has been in that research. Next, validity, what are the validity problem it have. And next, refutability. Refutability means it is a part of that repeatability. Justification: you need to justify the statement, whether if you are using any statement in our hypothesis or in your research, it could be in a justifiable manner. And verification: what a verification means, before going to any sending to the any manuscript to the journal itself, you need to verify that it could be very good or bad. So you need to show to your supervisor. So and then you need to send to the final to the our journals, whatever the journal you have been sending for your manuscript. Next thing is, there are two possibilities: nothing happened, something happened. So in real life situation, you need to take that. So nothing happened means nothing will happen. There is anything is in that. Next one is something happened. Something happened means the alternative. You need to write the hypothesis, whether it could be an um, a hypothesis testing for four procedure. First one is stating the hypothesis, setting the criteria for decision, collecting the data, and evaluate the null hypothesis. These are the four-step procedure, and whether checking the hypothesis. And to conclude, finally to the conclusion, objectives to be smart. The smart indicates specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-based. Whatever the research you, in your future also, it could be a smart. So then only you can achieve the same, achieve the thing. If you are going to the academia, so definitely they will ask that what are the publication you have been done, what are the journal. It could be an A category journal, B category journal, other it could be whether it could be under the scopus. So these are the things. So while you are doing to the research, definitely it could be a smart manner. And research questions and hypothesis become the signpost for explaining the purpose of study and guiding the research. Signpost: most of the research, most not only most of the research, but some scholars, they are using the signpost in our researches. And a hypothesis is an explanation and tentative unsure of itself for specific phenomena about the which questions you have been made. So if you are framing hypothesis is a major important step you are going to the research. And a well crafted hypothesis very often suggests the best way to perform the research and gives clues to the research design. Without research design, we can't go for any journal itself, because that research design will tell that what is the thing you are going to do. And to conclude it, it will be filtering the hypothesis, perhaps the most powerful tool the man has invented to achieve the dependable knowledge, so which is given by the Fred Kerlinker. If you have any doubts, please ask me. I will support you, and if you want any books reference, definitely I will provide you. So don't worry. um, and thank you very much for this class.